Hi, welcome to the next round of talking about the shifts of the Pioneer meta. So we have some decent shifts going on here this week. I have 3 decks to talk about that did well, I guess, in a challenge, or actually, I don't think none of these came from an actual 5.0 list. All the 5.0 league dumps are pretty much the same decks over and over. So the spicy decks, actually, wait, one came from a league, I believe, 5 dump. And that is a Fang deck. So we're going to be talking about all this today. Like I said, first things first, we always talk about the meta shifts, what changes have been made inside of the Pioneer meta, and then we'll get into the 3 decks, talk about them a little bit, and we'll get it, and then we'll close out the video. If you like this kind of content, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, hit that bell notification so in order for future videos. We're on our way to 2,000 subs. Let's get there together, and make sure you join the Pioneer family. Let's dive in. So Rakdos Demons has been on the back up on the uptick. So this past week, Rakdos Demons has overperformed 99 decks in total the past 2 weeks. Gruul Prowess on the slight increase as well, maintaining the same meta percentages, kind of close to also Rakdos Prowess and Devotion, which has been on the rise, around 51 to 57. So this is at the end of our tier 1 decks. Yes, Rakdos Prowesses keep dipping, which actually I think is healthier for the format. Honestly, I never really considered Rakdos Prowess to be all that healthy when it comes to an aggro deck. And Gruul Prowess, I think, of course, has a better late game than Rakdos Prowess, and it's less of a glass cannon-y deck, which is why I'm not a huge fan of Rakdos Prowess. Either it wins on turn 3, and you just kind of get got, or it kind of struggles. So I don't know. Like, I'm kind of happy that Rakdos Prowess is losing ground to the better deck, I think, in Gruul Prowess. And that also, that difference there, I think it allows Green Devotion to shine, right? Because Green Devotion can't really stop Rakdos Prowess in that regard. Like, if it gets its nut draw, it gets its nut draw. But Green Devotion can stabilize quite well post turn 3. Potentially even turn 2, if they could somehow get, a troll going, they might be able to start doing some work. And assuming because these meta shifts, we have our selecting a Coco deck back up in a little bit, gaining some ground, slight bit from previous weeks. So it's hovering around the same meta percentages. And then we have our Phoenix deck and our Tarka Red. So they did decide on it. Net decks that they were going to divide out the Tarka Red deck and the Prowess deck for a period of time. I'm pretty sure I looked at the Prowess deck. I had both lists underneath it. So it is kind of nice that, they are separated. So you kind of know that Gruul is taking up about 14% of the meta. And Pixie still going up a little bit. Dimir Ninjas and Boros Burn, which that means Red deck wins is on the huge dip because, Boros Burn, I think, is better suited in this meta. And of course, since the aggro decks are on the rise, you see Enigmatic Incarnation on the dip. It's very slow, which just really beats up on Rakdos Demons. But Demons was dropping off. So by that theory, logic, Demons was dropping the last 2 weeks prior to this last week here. So 3 weeks, it was 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago, it was dipping. This week it's back on the rise because, makes sense. People are not necessarily watching out for it as much because they expect it to be on the dip. For that, Incarnation has lost its best matchup, same with Niv, and they're dropping down. So that's pretty solid. I think this means the meta, again, is shifting a little bit more. Now, since the meta shift away from Demons, the decks that favored against Demons basically are gone-ish. And then, besides Devotion, right? Devotion still remains as the lone wolf in that regard, but now decks are more going to start probably gearing around the aggro decks, because you have Gruul Prowess, Rakdos Prowess, and you also have your Tarka Red, and Ninjas, potentially. Keep in mind, it's a little bit awkward against Pixie, right? Because Pixie's typically decent against mid-range because they have discount isn't big enough to bounce your mid-range threats. And you also have a decent tempo game going on there. So in that regard, it's pretty difficult, more so for that to occur. But I do think Boros Burn is pretty reasonable in this aspect. Not only do they have really good creatures, but they also have good burn spells to close the game out, post a bunch of rafts, like Path of Perils and stuff. So yeah, I actually really think this is a healthy meta. There's not really anything that's taking over the actual meta. Right now, it seems to be a 4-deck meta. You could argue it's 3 because you could combine the Prowess decks into 1 if you wanted to, based off of deck archetype style. But overall, I think it's pretty reasonable that 9% of the meta is a ramp deck. You have 17% representing the mid-range deck, and then you have like 20% representing aggro. Now, you could argue the meta is not healthy in the regard that there's no control deck in this loop section here. The best control deck is down here at the very bottom. We have a Azorius Lotus Field. Besides that, there's no control. But what are you going to do? Like I said, I think the meta is actually pretty good overall. And like I said, I have 3 decks to talk about today. Each one, I think 2 of them are really going to be a lot different and spicy. The other one, of course, is a Fang deck, so it's still spicy in the regards to actually as a meta deck. But, you know, it's Fang, so what do you expect? So, let's get into the list. Through PayPal, I'm offering for $20 play your deck through League. I also give you an article about how to improve the list, and as well as some sideboard guides in very particular matchups. If you want to check out, the link is in the description. Now, let's get back into the video. So, the first deck I'm going to talk about is this. I don't think it's, it is Hammer Time. We have talent to equip the hammer. We also, we don't. Okay, so this deck does not depend on the 1-drop auto-equipper. Okay, talent might be arguably better in some aspects, because if they remove the creature you target with it, then, well, that card's kind of bad. This one can re-equip every combat, so equipping the hammer is actually really important. And if you're going down the path of actually having Leyline Axe, it's also really nice to be able to reduce the equip cost of that as well. Shadow Spear for aggro. We have armor for basically a gigantic pump spell, or equipment. We have 4 chainsaws for a choice of removal that we can get off of a Kellen, and also could be just equipped to a Kimba. Then we have Fervent Champion, which should be able to equip a decent amount of these things for relatively cheap. And yeah, we have a couple of Nahiris, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about the deck. It's nice to see Nahiri actually see some play in Pioneer. So actually, I might be trying this for a live stream. I think I have most of these cards. The only one that might be up for debate is Nahiri. Just because, well, it is a mythic out of a set that nobody really opens on Arena as well. They don't really open in paper. But sideboard, we have 4 portable holes for aggro. We have 2 deflecting palms for a little bit of, shoving that back to our opponent's face. They try to burn us or also deal massive amounts of damage with either an Atraxa or a Valgavoth or whatever. Rest in Peace for Phoenix, Reanimator, Fang, Lauren as a way to hit artifacts and enchantments. Like Annex, we have a Anger for aggro. 2 Rebel Salvos as a way to hit mid-range threats. Could actually hit anything. That's kind of nice. Most of the time, right? 5 damage should kill most threats. Then we have a Wear Tear for artifact and enchantment removal, and with our Laurens. And that is our Boros Hammer Time / Nahiri equipment. So kind of sweet to see this as an actual archetype in the format. And I kind of wonder, for the most part, besides the hammer and the champion, most of this is standard legal. So you could technically make this in standard if you wanted to. But let's get into my second deck. So last week I covered, I believe, a deck that was just straight up mono green devotion with the Oculus in it. This time we have a Eldritch Evolution Collected Company deck. So that's really sweet. So we can sack our either our 1-drop elves to get a turn 2 Oculus, or we could sack them, get a Innocence, depending on the matchup. Extraction Specialist is pretty reasonable to get back your Thalias, potentially Fiend Artisan, or your Voice of Resurgence. Voice of Resurgence is really great, I think, especially since there's a lot of Fatal pushes. Even though Control's not really active, so it's not necessarily as good as it should be. But still, there's a lot of Coco decks, so that's kind of something to be relevant as well. And I guess for the mirror, it also works out. We have 3 Damping Spheres for Lotus Field and potentially mono green, but I don't really think that's necessarily worth it. We have 1 Drake for red-based decks, Curator for Graveyard Hate, Liberator for Artifact and Enchantment Hate. We have a little bit of Brutal Cathar for a little bit of Creature Hate, Knight of Autumn for a little bit of Artifact and Enchantment Hate, plus Life Gain if we need to. Archon of Emeria, pretty solid stopping combo decks. Deputy Detention to answer a bunch of aggro creatures. Skyclave Appetizers, catch-all removal for 4-drop mana value stuff from lower. Frillback, pretty solid card you get off of a Coco that exiles graveyards, gains life. So it kind of is a Swiss Army knife. Council of the Absolute. Is that what? I've never seen anybody play this card in a constructed format. Interesting. So I don't even know if this card is on Arena, so I probably can't play this. We have a Wilt Leaf Liege as a nice way, I guess, if your opponent has Thoughtseizes. We have Elesh Norn as a way to fight through. Also, Pixie too, right? Pixie will make you discard this, and then we have an Elesh Norn, pretty solid card to sack potentially your specialist, the evolution to get your Elesh Norn, while also be able to enable attacking with your Feed Artisan because your specialist died. So that is our Bant Coco evolution for Pioneer. Like I said, I really like the list because you get evolution, your voice for an Oculus or an Emergence, or even a specialist. Yeah, you could literally sack this, get a token, get this, get back to this. So then you have kind of more bodies. It's kind of sweet little interactions there as well. Tell me in the comment section which one of these decks is your favorite. We got one more deck to cover. Let's get into it. I am now offering Patreon and Locals content exclusive. It includes sideboard guides, budget guides, exclusive videos, as well as other types of content. If you want to check out the link, is in the description. Now, let's get back into the video. Last but not least, we have this Esper 4-colored Fang deck. We still have the Chariots, Parhelions. We have Kiora we picked up. A couple copies, looks like 3 of them. 4 Picklock Prankster, really great way to self-mill. Some Mendings, Faithful Mendings as a way to discard some Parhelions and stuff. Recommission, can get back your Grease Fang or your Oculus or your Kiora to set up more Fang. We have Gaze, and we have some Tome Scours to fill our yard up. That is the deck. Actually, this is pretty sweet in some regard, right? Because your goal, I guess, is to get back a Fang, Oculus, or a Kiora. So they really actually make a lot of sense playing Recommission. You don't really want to put them in play tapped because, I mean, Fang, you kind of want to be able to immediately use it to tap down for the Parhelion. So it makes sense that you would be suffering and paying 1 more mana. But still, I mean, a 2 mana, 3 Oculus is still very good rate. And then we have 1 Can't Stay Away to get back our Fang or our Oculus out of the yard. Sideboard, we have some Fragmentize as a way to hit on artifacts and enchantments. Burst to hit on, Hero, as well as a decent amount of other monocolor stuff, like the Overlords. 3 Cling to Dust for a little bit of graveyard heat, plus helps against, helps card draw, while also gaining some life against aggro. But you don't really probably want that against aggro. You want Temporary Lockdown and probably Vanishing versus aggro. But still, I mean, it's better for grinding matchups and also graveyard matchups, like Phoenix and the Mirror Fangs. Pithing Needle, I guess you could bring that in the Mirror as well to stop the Parhelion. But I guess in this deck, it doesn't really matter, right? Because you just start smashing face with an Oculus. That's not doing much. But if you face the original Fang, then that would work. But it's probably more for stuff like, you could do Annex, but that seems kind of weird. Especially since, I mean, once they cast it from hand, they get the first ability. So I guess it's more for Teferi, but Control's not a thing. You could do Thespian Stage. That's pretty good. But then again, Lotus Field's not very popular. So I'm kind of curious, actually, if you are the maker of this deck, or if you are Laugh Out Loud Tiger, let me know in the comment section what you are thinking you want 3 Pithing Needles for. Like I said, we have 3 lockdowns, pretty good against aggro, pretty respectable. We don't really play a 2-drop because we ended up kind of cutting a lot of that fluff out of the deck. The 2 mana 2/1 with Connive and all that kind of stuff. And we're able just to play some Picklock Pranksters, which is better, I think, most of the time. And then we have, Mending plus Tome Scour plus Gaze. So you have other ways on turn 2 to fill up your yard. So that is all we have to talk about. Like I said, let me know in the comment section which one of these decks is your favorite. And until next time, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Shout out to all my supporters. And if you want to see any other content from me, check out either one of these 2 videos and playlist. And I'll talk to you soon.